All right, I'm Troy Marsh from Columbus, Ohio. I am still an owner in a real estate team, but I'm no longer working in the business. Um, the last year that I was running the team, we did 33 million in production, and now I've partnered with another large team, and our goal this year is 70 million. So that's where I'm at. So, anyways, you guys all dressed up, and I was going to go put a jacket on and do all this stuff, but then I just decided I was going to be real. So I saw this meme today and I thought it was awesome.
Let's see it. Hold on.
Oh, I can't see it very well. But it
Oh,
says on day 1 of Zoom meetings, you're
I see
like
it.
dressed like the president, and
Oh, I
then
love
on day 14 you have a hoodie on. So I'm gonna be real here today, right? Craig Rochelle always says people follow a leader who's always real, not necessarily always right. So
love it. Yes.
that's my idea today. Um, awesome. So I obviously got tasked today to talk about lead conversion. And I think what I wanted to start off with, because I heard Linda say, or I heard Eric say, I'm going to be the downer of the group. And then I heard Linda say, we need to be really positive. And I think both of them are very, very correct in that, the scariest thing and the most fearful thing that I think a lot of us are feeling is fear of the unknown. And I
Right.
think that's what scares a lot of us the most. And so one of the things that John Maxwell talked about in his webinar series this week was the difference between optimism and hope. And so optimism says that you have a belief that things will get better and you're actually not doing anything about it though. And hope is that you're going to go and make things get better. And so when I thought about, lead generation and then lead conversion during a shifting market, and especially one like this that shifted pretty much overnight for a lot of us. I know in the Columbus market, we are still buying and selling homes because we are listed as an essential part of the economy. However, definitely things have slowed down, and I think showings are down as much as 40%. And so there's definitely less happening. And I think we all have an option, right? We can sit at home and watch the news, or we can take action. And so Sarah shared with us, obviously, a lot of great ideas about lead generating. And yet one of the things that I thought about right when I was kind of putting things together is the life cycle of a lead. So hopefully you guys will be able to see this. I don't know if you can read my writing,
It's
but
a little hard
basically
to read, but if you say it should be okay.
okay, cool. I wasn't sure if you guys would be able to, but anyways, so there's basically 3 stages to the life cycle of a lead. There's the lead generation piece, which when we talk about getting leads is probably the part that gets talked about most. And that's why we spend so much time talking about Zillow and open houses and different things like that, which is all very, very important. And yet, the one thing that popped out at me, like that Sarah said, is that she sent out all those letters, took the time to generate those leads. And yet, how many agents, when they got 8 phone calls, would be so focused on finding their buyer a place that they wouldn't actually follow up with those 8 people? Because actually those 8 people have raised their hand and said, if the right person comes along who's willing to pay the right price, I'm willing to sell my house.
Yep.
And so when you talk about lead conversion, I think it's super important to pay attention to that. And I loved what was mentioned in the Shift book on this topic. And it says that lead conversion is actually a collapsed process disguised as an event.
Yep.
And so if you could see my drawing there, what you would see is that the lead generation is just a really small part of taking somebody that is a lead, quote unquote, and turning them into a closing, which is the way that everybody gets paid. So even if you're on this webinar and you're not a real estate agent, it still works the same way, right? You meet somebody or talk to somebody, and then you provide a service of some kind. And then eventually at the very end, in most cases, you're getting paid. And so So really what we want to focus on as agents or people who generate leads, often not face-to-face, although that's obviously an option. Right now, it's not an option. So we wanted to talk about the difference between a lead and a contact, which I think is something that a lot of us kind of use interchangeably, and there's definitely a difference.
I'm so glad you're going to do this, talk about this, Troy, because this was my first question, actually, I was going to ask you, was I think there's a big misconception around people having a contact versus saying that they have a lead.
Mm-hmm. So what we describe a lead as is somebody that we've had a one-way conversation with, meaning we've sent them a message, we've left them a message, we've texted them, and yet they haven't responded back. Once you create that two-way conversation, that's when you actually have a contact. And I think, as Sarah mentioned, they're happening in many, many different ways, and they always do, right? And yet I think right now we're seeing a major shift in our market, and I think this is happening across the country, that texting and direct messaging on social media is becoming a really effective way of communicating with people, because people sometimes just don't answer their phone.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about a lead and a contact, and I think when a shift happens, what happens a lot, and I've had, I don't know if it's the pleasure or the curse of living through the previous shift in 2008. I think for those people who weren't in the business, though, there's been so much comparison to 2008. And although 2008, a shift is a shift, I do think that this shift is a little bit different, and yet a lot of the things that we need to do are exactly the same. And one of the things that we heard a lot in 2008, and I'm actually starting to hear it with some of the shifts that's happening within internet lead generation, specifically like Zillow and Realtor.com, is the idea that leads aren't as good as they used to be. And I think that kind of is where that idea, that lead conversion is disguised as an event, really struck me, because a lot of people really, they're upset with Zillow because they're getting less leads for the same amount of money that they were spending before. And they thought that they were really good at lead conversion because they were closing leads that came from Zillow. And the reality is they just got enough leads that they got lucky every once in a while. And so lead conversion is really the skill that oftentimes is the difference between the agents that make it in a shift and the agents that don't, because they have the ability to actually take someone who thinks that they want to buy or sell a house, but doesn't really know, and walk them down the path. So there's basically three or four pieces to lead conversion, depending on how you look at it. The first one is capturing. So that's what we say when we talk about the lead versus the contact. So when you just have a lead, you don't necessarily have all the information that you need to be able to stay in touch with them and turn them into a contact. Sometimes you do, right? If the number's right or the email is correct, but oftentimes you don't. So once you do get a hold of them, though, you've got to get the right information. So one of the scripts that I always like to use, or ideas of lead conversion, is, a lot of times, especially with internet leads, people will put down just their spam email box, right? The one that they never check. And so ask a question once you talk to them, something like, what's the best email to send it to? Now, a lot of agents don't ask that. They just assume that the one that they gave them is the right one. And what you'll find is that people don't respond. So getting as much of that good information as you can. One of my other favorite things, if you do meet somebody in person, which right now you're not probably, is though to not carry business cards. I quit carrying business cards a long time ago. And the reason is because if I meet somebody in person and I just give them my business card, I don't know about you guys, but I usually clean my glove box out in my car about once every 3 or 4 months. And I throw away no less than 15 or 20 business cards and never look at them again. So right now, I used to just get their phone number or their email. And now I usually just send them a text right there when I'm standing in front of them. So the first step is capturing. And then the next step is going to be connecting. And the connecting portion is the part that I think often gets collapsed down into one step. And yet sometimes it's a lot more than one step. And when it becomes more than one step, it becomes what we call cultivating. And I think right now, that's kind of where we're at, because you do have to be sensitive to the environment we're in. I actually had another agent text me last night, what I would consider to be like a blanket mass text that looked to be individual, but it was very obvious that it wasn't. And the reason it was obvious was because she didn't know this person. That was basically saying like, hey, I'm just checking in on all the people that I know to make sure that we do something to take care of you. And it was really, really generic. And it was honestly probably taken worse than if they would have just texted and asked for business.
That's such a great thing to share.
Because it's so disingenuous.
Right.
They know what you're getting at. So one of the things that I wanted to give to you guys today was a text message. Ashley, my wife, is still selling, and I'm going to put it in the chat here. But this is a text message, and hopefully she's going to have to be okay with me sharing it. But this is a text message that she's been sending out to our database that is really funny. And it's part of a longer script that I actually R&D'd from another agent in one of the groups that I was in. It might have even been the Shift group. But it's basically a text message from a really long script. And the funny thing about it is the toilet paper comment at the end is what really takes the edge off of the whole thing. Mm. So, and it's something that just is what we call a pattern interrupt. And it just makes them like realize that, hey, we are just reaching out. And she does do these individual. And I always like to, maybe throw something personal at the front of that you know about that person, but just to be staying in touch with them. Because I do believe, at least for the Columbus market, that unless, and to Eric's point, none of us know what's going to happen in the future. So we have to prepare for the worst. And yet, if everything continues the way it has these first couple weeks of the quarantine, my belief is that when they lift the quarantine, that there's going to be a mad rush of listings hitting the market. And what we know from the National Association of Realtors studies year after year after year is 2/3 of buyers and sellers only interview one agent. And I believe that in this time, it's going to be even higher than that. And the reason is because just like we talked about, there's people that are optimistic and waiting for somebody to drop something in their lap. And then there's people who are hopeful, who are going out and actually doing something about it. And if you're one of these agents that's going out and reaching out to your database of people that already know, like, and trust you, and then also going back into your leads, because leads is not the problem that we have in real estate today. It's lead conversion and lead follow-up. And if you're the one that's going out and you're the one that's top of mind, people are talking to fewer and fewer people because they're not running into people. If you're the one person that's top of mind and they had planned on listing their house May 1st, and now it's going to be June 1st, and their whole goal was to get their house sold and get moved into another one before their kids start school in August, they're going to call the one person that's top of mind, that they know is working, that they know is doing things in the business. And if that's not you, just be prepared to see some of your past clients listing with other people that did.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on one sec, Troy, because we got a lot of comments. Okay, so the first one is a couple people didn't see the script, so I'm going to read it out loud for everybody. It just says, "Hey Troy, it's Ashley Marsh. Hope you all are staying sane with all this. Smiley face. Just checking in to see how you are doing. We just wanted to see if there's anything we can help you with. Groceries, errands, TP, etc. Ashley." So I reposted that, and I love that you said a pattern interrupt. I think that's awesome. Deborah commented and said, TOMA is critical right now, which for those of you that don't know what that means, that stands for top of mind awareness. And it's exactly what Troy is talking about. And then Troy, we did have one quick question. They said, when we talk about market shift, besides what you mentioned, shift in leads, do you think that there will be a shift in home prices as well? Do you want to give your thoughts or opinion on that?
Yeah, I do. I think it depends on, the answer is it depends, and it depends a lot on how long this lasts. In Columbus, I can only speak for our market because I do think each market can be very different. In our market, though, we had a very, very strong January and February. And so we have a lot of recent appraisals, and obviously those transactions that were in contract in February, getting multiple offers, 20 or 30 in some cases, are going to be closing in March. So if this is over by May or the beginning of June, you know, appraisers are typically looking back 6 months or less is where they like to be. So I believe that we've got the appraisal history in place that if it only lasts until May or June, that we won't really see much of a drop off in prices. We have definitely seen the higher end affected at a much larger level in terms of showing activity and properties going into contract than I would say like the sub 350, 400 range, depending on the market.
Yep. Great response. Yeah, I agree with all of that too.
So I think as you're looking though, like Eric said, is create those thresholds that where your business is going to make drastic changes depending on how low your pendings go. And when you're talking about that lead conversion, always remember that your goal is to get an appointment. And I think honestly, a lot of agents right now are getting ready to get ready because they don't know what to do because they're used to meeting people face to face and they don't know. And one other thing that I got from the John Maxwell series this week that I absolutely loved was the guy who runs all of his companies asked him one time, how come you're so excited when you hit your goal? And then the next day you're trying to figure out how you could have done it better. And he said that the reason is because every time he goes out and does something, he does it at 100%. Mm-hmm. And he's glad when he hits his goal. And yet he said that when yesterday's ceiling can be today's floor, he can always get better. And so my encouragement to you guys as you're going through this time that's uncertain, right? There's no book that's been written on how to deal with a global pandemic as a real estate agent or as a small business owner. And yet if what you do today, you build on tomorrow, I think you can always be better. And I promise you, if every day you do that at the end of this, you'll be standing on top when a lot of people that maybe you thought would be standing there with you won't. And I'll close with this because I did live through the shift of 2008 and 2012. And I didn't really think about it until recently when I was just reflecting on what it was like to be in the business then, because I was young and I didn't sell a house to somebody I knew until I had been in the business for 3.5 years. I always joke I was 22. I got my license 4 days after I turned 22. And I always joke that my friends were more worried about where they were drinking that night than where they were sleeping. And so they weren't buying houses. And I reflected on what I felt. And I remember people just disappearing. Like there were agents that I had massive respect for that all of a sudden one day like moved out of their office. And I was like, where'd they go? And they were like, oh, I got another job, or I got out of the business. So for those of you that didn't live through that, pay attention to lead conversion and pay attention to every lead that you get and treat it the way that it deserves to be treated. And if you do that, you'll be in great shape when all of this is over.
Troy, that's awesome advice. Thank you for sharing that. And I know that unfortunately we're at the end of our time. However, if you could take like 1 to 2 minutes and talk about your team and what Ashley's doing with the virtual open houses, could you hit on that? Only because I promised it to everybody and we have people asking.
Yep. Yeah. To be honest with you, if you, we can have Blair send it out with the notes. But we did a mastermind, and it wasn't just our team. Lauren Wyatt from our office also did it last week and did a great job. And basically, we were just doing Facebook Live. So this weekend, they're going to try either doing a Zoom or actually doing a pre-recorded video and then doing a watch party. Because one of the biggest challenges with doing just having only one agent there and doing a Facebook Live is that if you're not somebody who's done Facebook Live consistently, you have the whole technology thing that you're dealing with. And then you're trying to answer questions and shoot a video of the house. And there's just a lot of variables at play. So the two things that we're trying this weekend are shooting the video ahead of time, having one person holding the camera and then one person talking to the camera so that you can show things like how wide are the hallways, like give the video perspective by a person being in it. And then the second thing was to be available to answer questions from people as the video goes on.
Yep, that's awesome. Julie just said they're doing a pre-recorded on Saturday and a watch party on Sunday.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing from several people also. So I think that's a great idea. Yeah, we can also share that, promoting it prior. What are you guys doing to promote it prior? Just
yeah,
social?
so we did a Facebook event and then did an ad around that event.
Oh, okay, great. Yep.
And then Lauren Wyatt, though, they didn't do any paid ads. So they just reached out to their sphere and past clients. And I thought it was a really good script. They said, hey, we are able to still buy and sell in this market. And one of the things that we're doing is making sure that we're keeping our clients and future clients safe. And so we're trying out brand new things that we've never done before, and we'd love to get your participation. We're doing this virtual open house on Saturday, and that worked really well. And they picked up a client, and then one of the agents on our team that did the open house picked up a client that they didn't know from doing it this weekend. So it's working from a lead conversion perspective.
Okay, couple more questions. Did you get it in other Facebook groups? Any like local Facebook groups? I'm thinking maybe Kelly means.
Get it, post it.
Yeah, post it. Yep, she just said.
I did not post it in any local Facebook groups. However, I would be happy to. I'd be happy to share it wherever. I guess I'm afraid to do this, but I guess if you want to email me,
well, we're gonna send it out.
You're going to send it out? Okay.
If you send it to us, we'll send it to everybody who registered, because I've also had people ask for your graphic of the lead cycle,
Okay.
The cycle of the lead graphic, and then the 4 steps of the lead conversion piece. So I'll get all that. We can send it out. And then let's see, a couple quick. Yep, we'll get the life cycle. Sorry, the chat's blowing up. Do you know how long you do your live virtual open house for, or the video?
So we did it on Saturday. We just went through the house once, so it was probably about 20 minutes. On Sunday, we went through a couple times, so it was probably 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
But I think if we pre-record it, we have the ability to just kind of sit there on chat, which was another reason why we wanted to do that, so it could last longer.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Perfect. Yeah, awesome. Okay, everybody is saying thank you. Really, really helpful. Love everything that you shared. So you can send us that stuff, or maybe we can post some of it in the chat if we can. Tell them how they can find you. Facebook, Instagram, social media, podcast, any of the above.
Yeah, so I've been, you can just search me, Troy Marsh, on Facebook, and I've been doing daily lives, which is another thing that you guys could do, I think, to stay in front of your clients. So daily Facebook lives, and then at Troy Marsh KW on Instagram. And then I did just drop my first podcast this week, so I'd love for you to follow me there on Instagram at Columbus Closers, and yeah, you can check me out there.
Awesome. Okay, guys, thank you so much, Troy.